Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to talk about alien technology.
Alien.
Technology has been advancing nowadays, and of course with AI and so forth, it's quite exciting. There's been UFO sightings throughout history, in paintings and textbooks as well. Today I'm going to talk about some interesting situations that have come up in illustrations and stories. Of course, if alien technology is advanced as the people who swear they see UFOs say it is, wouldn't it make it sense that those alien creatures have had much longer than a few decades of traveling around? These out-of-this-world ships and flying saucers surely just weren't invented in the 40s and sent over in Roswell, were they? Quite an interesting, deserted place, not even McDonald's during that time frame.
Ran away.
Bye, Grimace. I know what I'm not wanted.
In this tidbit of 10 ideas, revealing some various claims, they have seen aliens and some sort of flying objects. These folks saw aliens long before they became a young, interesting thing in modern day pop culture, or in places where alien awareness hadn't yet reached in the same way it has in modern day internet lore. Sometimes centuries before all that, unsettling as it may be, here we dive in. Just after dawn on April 14th, 1561, many men and women in the city of Nuremberg, then a free imperial city and part of the Holy Roman Empire, witnessed what they described as some kind of aerial battle coming out of the sky. A broadsheet infamously made the event at the time chronicled the incident as occurring, with hundreds of various spheres flying through the sky, and some flying to Earth in clouds of smoke. Hundreds of witnesses individually observed hundreds and hundreds of spheres flying rapidly and erratically overhead. There is supposedly one very large black triangle object too, that appeared to be, of course, the biggest and most notable of all the sights in the sky. Some described it as an aerial battle coming out of the sun, and were unbelieved by what they were seeing. Ever since then, UFOologists have claimed that 1561 sighting above Nuremberg was the case where an entire city witnessed an aerial alien battle. Quite an exciting time frame. Spacecraft between two warring factions were supposedly fighting each other. The claim goes, if that's true, this would be one of the biggest and most notable UFO sightings ever recorded. Skeptics disagree, of course. Scientists say the Nuremberg residents most likely witnessed some kind of unique and bizarre, but thoroughly natural, solar phenomenon. The leading theory where it is known that 1561 group saw what is now known as the sundog. Well, that's when sunlight refracts all ice crystals in the atmosphere and flashes bright spots of light on one of both sides of the sun. In that case, sundogs most often occur when the sun is near the horizon. Let's just say that just after dawn. I wonder if there's a sun count. Anyway, on the morning of July 27th and July 28th, 1566, then again less than 2 weeks later on August 7th, the residents of Basel, Switzerland were given quite the wake-up call. On those mornings, right after sunrise, many locals in Basel reported seeing a series of unique celestial phenomena. In the first one, an unusual sunrise was followed by a total eclipse of the moon. Certainly unique, but not necessarily aliens. Then in the second one, the sun rose red. That often happens out on the ocean. You know the old saying, red sky at night, sailor's delight. Red sky in the morning, sailor take warning. But in landlocked Basel, a red sun was seen as an omen at best and some sort of celestial trickery at worst. Then on the third morning, a cloud of moving, bizarre red and black spheres or orbs were seen blocking out part of the sun as it rose. The third morning, in one that is most puzzling to UFOologists, they claim that the Basel, just like Nuremberg before it, was the site of some kind of alien sky battle, witnessed by folks living in the Swiss town. Predictably, at the time, people in Basel believed to be religious event, pamphlets and broadsheets that counter the event take the angle of thinking, or the angel of thinking, as the idea of little green men whipping around in the flying saucers. Would have been completely unknown to the average Basel resident in the middle of the 16th century, but maybe that's what it was. And Nuremberg too. Big sky battles as part of some alien war? Quite possibly, who knows? They certainly did. Too bad they didn't have old Nokia back then. In the summer of 1952, people in the multiple areas around the North African nation of Morocco reported seeing bizarre lights and orbs in the sky. It started over the city of Marrakech on the night of July 16th, when at about 9 p.m. local time, many people saw a large hovering disc flying horizontally across the sky. Witnesses referred to it as having a leaping and bounding motion in its flight. Then a second disc appeared right after it. Both flying discs hovered for about a minute together before they went off into the night sky and weren't seen again. A second sighting occurred on August 2nd, 1952, at about 8:45 p.m. local time. Make sure you write that down. In that one, an object flashed in the sky over the town of Moulia Bolsaham in French Morocco. Object was discovered as being red at its center and a blue edge around it. It flew very rapidly from the southeast to the northwest and was visible for only about 20 seconds, this time before disappearing over the horizon. The Moroccans weren't the only ones to report UFOs in the summer of '52. An Algerian train conductor reported seeing one over a remote part of Algeria on August 12, 1952. In that case, the conductor reported seeing a ball of fire suddenly appear against a clouded nighttime backdrop. The ball raced across the clouds from east to west, leaving a luminous pink trail. Then, weirdly, the object stopped, appeared to grow, become even brighter red, and then blew up. But the strangest part was that the railroad agent didn't hear any noise from this supposed explosion. So what was it, you ask? Throughout the rest of the August, other saucer-like objects were seen at various points flying around northern Morocco and southern Spain. People in various towns kept reporting flying spaceships actively to the authorities in each country. The reports carried all the way through until the end of September 1952, when a pilot of a so-called tourist plane witnessed flying saucers around his airplane while flying over Casablanca and Tanger. The CIA documented all the sightings, but they have never been publicly explained. Did Eskel see aliens? And was it then documented in the Bible? The Book of Eskel is famous among Christians and religious scholars alike for describing Eskel's alleged encounter with beings with four faces and having visions involving a wheel within a wheel. That's a gear. The religious among us believe that was Eskel seeing God. The skeptics and ufologists among us counter that the ancient man actually saw aliens, and what he's describing in the Bible is really some kind of ET encounter. Both could have really been true, actually. Is God an alien? Who knows? Could the Bible have been the first place where early ufologists, even if they didn't consider themselves that, peddled their opinions and beliefs? In this story, Eskel was struck as one of the captives of the Babylon conquest of 606 BC. There on the river Tresvar, the heavens were open, and Eskel claimed that he saw visions of God. Specifically, he first saw the likeness of four living creatures. They were built somewhat like men, but they had four faces: a lion, an ox, an eagle, and a man. Their feet were like those of calves, and they each had four wings, two which covered their bodies and two which stretched up in the sky. To make matters worse, they each moved among flashes of lightning. That's probably not what they made, but if you're going to have four faces, you might as well really lean in and give us a full show of what they're doing. Then beneath each of those four creatures were four wheels, because if you need wings, you need wheels as well. They were fashioned in such a way that he described them each as a wheel within a wheel. That wheel could move in four directions without turning at all, and the rims of those wheels were supposedly full of eyes. Above all that, there sat a single man, or a single being with the appearance of a man, he described and reported, who was supposed to be surrounded by fire and nearly overpowering with brightness. That was God. But who were those beings with all the four faces and the wheels with eyes? Angels? Aliens? Was he in fact the first person to ever document a sighting of flying saucers? We'll never know, unfortunately, but something tells us that UFOs and skeptics were arguing that with Christian believers, for as long as each group lives. In 1066, Halley's Comet was seen across England. It was thought to be a very unsettling omen, as soon after King Harold II was soon dead at the Battle of Hastings, and William the Conqueror rushed in to take the English throne. People 1,000 years ago didn't have the ability to conceptualize alien spacecraft. Many contemporary observers were pretty certain of what they were seeing in the sky as being some type of comet, of course, or something related to that, maybe an asteroid, but the timing of it coming along with the Norman invasion and the Battle of Hastings was critically important to how English people viewed the events. A chronicler from the time, William of Masselbury, wrote about how Elmer of Masselbury saw the comet in both 989 and again in 1066. In the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, sensing something important with the comet in both instances, William noted that second sighting in particular was a sign that times were changing and the world as they knew it was ending. Not long after, a comet protruding, they say, a change in governments appeared trailing its long flaming hair through the empty sky, concerning which were was a fine saying of a monk of our monastery called Ethamir, crouching in terror at the sight of the gleaming star. And worse yet, to have it be complimentary or unexplainable by the primitive science back then, those people had to dispose at the time. The 1066 sighting of what would come to be known as the Halley's Comet, an idea in the Brock's tapestry. In that way, it was the first ever known illustration of the comet produced anywhere on Earth. That it came at the same time as the Norman invasion of England and the reign of William the Conqueror left many locals feeling like the supernatural and surreal had descended upon the little world. Which is interesting. I think the Halley's Comet is connected to another person who was born when Halley's Comet came, and he died when it last went. Alexander the Great and his army supposedly encountered aliens while they were supposedly fighting along the way, trying to conquer the entire world. That is what a series of chariot events of ancient texts suggests, at least. The most notable supposed sighting occurred back in 329 BC. That year, Alexander the Great was on his way east to conquer much of the known world at the time, because he was great. He and his army were preparing at one point to cross the Indus River in order to attack a force amongst Indian soldiers, and that had been waiting for his arrival. Well, when Alexander's men got to the river, they saw something incredible. Two great shining silvery shields spitting fire around the rim. Sounds like they could be flying saucers, maybe. The two shields then proceeded to dive bomb repeatedly at Alexander's army. War elephants, horses, and men all panicked. Most of them refused entirely to cross the river at all after seeing the saucer-like beings. Then, strangely, the two flying shields disappeared into the sky just as soon as they arrived. Crazy! Witnesses were shocked of how fast they flew away. Weird, of course. And that's not the only sighting Alexander the Great's men had with UFOs. 7 years after that, while Alexander had his charges after attack on Venetian city along the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea, they again witnessed the two large and unknown objects flying into the sky. One of those objects supposedly shot a beam of light into a city wall and crumbled it to dust, with a big, spectacular boom. Then the objects disappeared as quickly as they had shown up, and Alexander's men used the crumbling wall to advance into the city and take it with ease. Obviously, both of those supposed sightings are regarded as pretty suspicious by historians and modern-day observers. Likely, there are legends built upon this over the centuries. But what if they're not? What if Alexander really interacted with aliens and had a good deal with them, making him from good to great? There was a very mysterious wave of airships seen all across the US beginning late in 1896 in Northern California, then extending across much of 1897 along the eastern seaside in the Midwest. To this day, nobody quite knows what the deal was or why so many people reported seeing airships. Beginning in 1896 in Stockton, and then in other cities in California, locals reported to police and newspapers alike that they had seen a slow-moving flying object in the sky. Most of those sightings were confined in Northern California. However, a good deal of them were also seen up the Pacific Ocean into Oregon, Washington, and even British Columbia. Newspapers reported extensively on the sightings, but authorities didn't really have any answers, and eventually the observations petered out. Then in 1897, they petered in. A series of new sightings rocketed the Midwest and the East Coast. Similar witnesses reported indicated large, slow-moving objects, all sorts of areas, places like Arkansas and Texas, to Michigan and Ohio. East Coast of the Atlantic Ocean as well. Some people even claim that it looked like humans, or at least some kind of creature who looked like humans, were inside the object piling in them. Between the two seats of sightings, several thousand witnesses reported were taken and logged. Newspapers reported on the phenomenon heavily too. In total, hundreds of thousands of people may have seen the ships. Retroactively, they had been described as various weather phenomenon or natural events related to sun, clouds, or the sky itself. But many people are still convinced, of course, that something much more sinister was going on with the alien spacecraft, or even possibly early military aerial exploration as well. As such, the sighting of 1896 and 1897 had never been completely explained. On September 22nd, 1609, 3 different areas of the Gangwon province of Korea flared up with sightings of UFO objects. The sightings began in the morning, roughly from 9 to 11 a.m. in the area of the region of the Korean. There was witness reported seeing a halo or wash basin-like object floating through the sky. From there, the sightings continued in Churchin County between about 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., with people reportedly very similar descriptions. Finally, in Yongyang County at some point after 1 p.m., a high-ranking Korean government official reported seeing a UFO flying through the area. Those UFO sightings were taken so seriously, in fact, that they were a part of the official historical record of Korea. They were painstakingly documented at the time. Now, more than 400 years later, they live on the official records of Gangwon Province. Of course, the most interesting sighting here is that of Mungwan Kim. He was a noted and much respected government official. He had a lot to lose by lying about sightings, one would think, of course. Plus, this was a few hundred years before the advancements of telephone, internet, and social media. You can't exactly Instagram back then. It'd be cool to see a cowboy Instagramming though. So word couldn't have spread from country to country by way of media accounts, which might motivate copycat people to claim that they have seen UFOs when they hadn't. So what was up in the sky, of course? Maybe a comet, maybe an asteroid, maybe a dinosaur. Whatever it was, it must have been serious enough for a noted government official to weigh on it. Sadly, we will never know, of course. On August 12th, 1883, Mexican astronomer Jose Bonanilla was preparing his telescope to do some work with solar system stuff when he noticed several small objects that appeared to be blocking the sun. He wasn't just covering his eyes when he looked up through his lenses. Concerned and also interested, Jose investigated further. Over the next 48 hours, he used a collodon process to capture nearly 500 surprisingly detailed ink photographs of the object as they danced and moved across the face of the sun. As he was never able to identify them, and as he will still today cannot totally identify them, Jose gets the official credit of having taken the first images of a UFO in all of human history. So congrats to him, of course. As for what Jose himself believed, he thought the objects might have been a group of high-flying geese that just so happened to cross the path of his view of the sun at the time. Modern day astronomers have suggested something else, though it wasn't UFOs, experts now say, but likely a nearby comet that was actively breaking apart. In fact, some wonder whether it wasn't a massive comet at all, that might have been heading straight for Earth and only missed the planet and its atmosphere by a few hundred miles. Perhaps Jose inadvertently captured what was almost the end of the world and life on the planet as we know. Another dino extinction catastrophe or the year 2000 type deal. If that's the case, we're just glad the comet didn't hit us. After all, if we had, we probably wouldn't be here today to tell you about it. So aren't you glad you're watching this video now? If not, no worries, I have more videos to come. On April 19th, 1897, a journalist named S.E. Hayden, working for the Dallas Morning News, wrote a story about a supposed UFO crash in the small city of Aurora, Texas. That's about 45 minutes from Dallas itself. According to Hayden's report, an alien spacecraft supposedly struck a windmill on the property of a local man named J.S. Proctor 2 days earlier at about 6 a.m. local time. The pilot of the supposed alien craft was said to be not of this world. Of course, a flying saucer into a windmill is usually not something you see on this planet, and he also said it was a Martian. According to Hayden's report, quoted a supposed Army Signal Service officer named T.J. Weems, who was stationed at nearby Fort Worth, as the man who supposedly saw the alien and commented on its otherworldly appearance. Then, shockingly, Aurora citizens supposedly buried the alien and scrapped its craft. Interesting. I'm curious what they have on its headstone. Out of this world character is probably on its headstone. Rather than allowing government officials to take a look at what they came across, alien was supposedly buried with Christian rites at the Aurora Cemetery. The wreckage of its supposed spacecraft was then allegedly dumped into a well that was located under the damaged windmill. And that was that. Awkward. Interesting. At least it had a proper burial. In 1935, at least one another local man named Brawley Oates purchased J.S. Proctor's property and began digging up the well. He wanted to clean out the debris and use the old well for himself. But then, after supposedly coming into contact with those 4-decade alien spaceship parts, he was said to have suddenly developed an extreme case of arthritis. Did the alien's otherworldly craft condition to haunt humans with its space-like creation and contents? And if you touch aliens, will it give you arthritis? There could be a lot of worse things, of course, but I'd rather take arthritis. Maybe it's then you can't handshake an alien, but 6 feet apart is probably their quota for them. Anyway, most likely not, we had to say this. Years after Hayden's report, and note supposedly arthritis, old school Aurora residents came forward to reveal that the newspaper man was playing a prank on his readers, As this not supposedly true part of the story went, an 86-year-old local woman told journalists in 1980 that Hayden had made up the story to bring attention to the town, and it surely did. As the railroad had bypassed Aurora, the town was starting to slowly die off, and the journalists apparently felt like that they would revive interest in this city by telling the story. It didn't really work even today. Aurora's population is just shade over about 1,000 people or so. I wasn't quite aware of this story until I read up on it, so now you know of Aurora, Texas. But it has brought UFOologists out to see what it's all about. Would you go to see Aurora, Texas after this? Would you dig its grave? Or put a glowing flower on its tombstone? Let me know in the comments below. Have you seen a UFO? Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for the subs and likes. Have a great one. Bye.